Fantastic, Brian.
Yeah, good job, Brian.
Carry on. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Love that last line further.
Amazing.
Right on. Cheers. Thank you. Nice to hear.
Yeah.
What was I going to do next?
Take a breath.
Auction. Take a drink of
Right.
water.
Yes, I was doing my Canadian coffee. Right, I've done a version of this here before with Amram downstairs. Oh, and I got a great piece that's kind of like this that I'm going to do, is it tomorrow? Jesus.
Sunday, yeah.
It's like 1:30 in the afternoon. But it's I'm going to do the auction piece, which people love, because I was there in the room when the On the Road scroll was bought. And not only was I there, but in keeping with something that I kind of picked up on from the Pranksters and the Grateful Dead was, and Jack and Neil did this too, was recording conversations, recording stuff. And this was back in the day when it was cassettes on a little thing about the size of a pack of cigarettes.
Yep.
And I carried these things everywhere. That's how I got a lot of the stuff in
Little mini cassette.
the Boulder 82 book, because when I read about Kesey and the gang, like they were always recording stuff and filming stuff, and so I was like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. So I did this. So I recorded the auction. So I have an actual tape of how this all went down that day. And it was wild, and none of us knew what was going to happen. So here is a little bit of that. So when you go to one of these huge auctions, the bidding increment, I didn't know any of this. I'd never been at an auction in my life. And I'm at this one. The bidding increments are all predetermined, okay? So like over $1,000, if you bid, it's $100 more. So, you can't just pick an amount. So over $5,000, it starts to go up $500 with each bid. Over $10,000, it goes up $1,000 each time. Over $1 million, it goes up in $100,000 increments. When it hits $2 million, it starts to go up in $200,000 steps. But by then, it's starting to get out of my league. Up above the auctioneer is an electronic board that lists the number, the lot number, and then the current bid in US dollars. And then below that are lines with each country's equivalent monetary value. So as the auctioneer is zipping up the numerical ladder, all the foreign currency values are flipping by like the train track changing signs at Penn Station. Euros, UK francs, UK pounds, French francs, Swiss francs, Deutschmarks, yen, lira, and the good old Canadian dollar just squeaking in on the bottom line. We exist. In fact, in a general sense, there really was one of those we exist feelings in the room. It was the magic zing of the old Jack ring. So the auction's going by lickety-split. Lot 249, a copy of Ulysses, signed by Joyce himself, and get this, Matisse, who I always remember for saying, work cures everything. I love that quote. Okay, I'll open the bidding at 5,000, 55, 6,000, and 20 seconds later, sold for 13,000 to panel number 319 in the fourth row. It all happens like less than a minute. The big ones take maybe a minute and a half or something, but lots of stuff is going for under 10 grand, all sorts of little things, no idea what they are. But I kind of felt like bidding just because they're so cheap. It had to be something cool, right? I don't know, some Emerson thing or something. But there's this catch, you see, you can't like scratch your nose or anything, or move your arm or something, because you might be bidding. And then of course, your nose would get itchy, and so you'd have to kind of turn away from the auctioneer, and like a teacher at school or something, and sneak a scratch. So, you're watching your moves, watching the crowd, watching these people, watching their catalogs, and marking in scores, and bidding up to a certain point on lots. And then, when their last item of the day is gone, they immediately get up and leave. Professional buyers. People with money. A set of Oxford dictionaries goes for $850,000. And I bet they're used. An autographed copy of To Kill a Mockingbird for $18,000. And I keep wondering, who are these people? Then the guy sitting next to Doug Brinkley gets up and steps out for a minute at about lot 270. And he's this big guy wearing this striped suit, like, I don't know what, a 20s gangster, 40s hipster, I don't know. Just a big white tie and a big black shirt, and his hair is greased straight back, almost like a football player, but like with a cuff-link Four Seasons polish and rock and roll swagger. And by the time we got to lot 300, there was only 4 gunslingers left on the sideline phone lines, as the auctioneer is still rattling through numbers like he's unloading on Bonnie and Clyde's car. Rat-a-tat-tatting by the thousands, 9,000, 10,000. My whole life's worth flashing by in split seconds for some piece of autographed paper. Holy zippers. 15,000, 24,000, 45,000. Fair warning at 45,000. Sold for $45,000. An Edith Wharton letter goes for $800. Bargain. Must have been a crummy letter.
Yeah.
Went for a walk, love Edith. I dig the gaslight finger snapping. Then comes the finale. Lot number 307, the lot a lot of you have been waiting for. A little auctioneer's humor. Jack Kerouac's original typescript scroll of On the Road, shown here before you on the screens. I'll start the bidding at $650,000 on this. Wow. I'm out. 650,000, 700,000, 750,000, 800,000, 850,000, 900,000, $950,000, $1 million over here, $1 million in the front row, $1,100,000, $1,200,000, $1,300,000, $1,400,000 over the phone, and then quickly $1,500,000. And all the time it's Brinkley's buddy who's flashing up his white paddle, number 479, as soon as anyone else bids anything. The old instant paddle flash routine. Then after a pause, the front row finally bids again. $1,600,000, then quick, $1,700,000. Oh my God, Jesus. And then $1,800,000, boom, $1,900,000. Yeah, there's just not a little pause. And it's totally silent in the room, of course. You could hear a dream pop. We can wait a little bit. Okay. The animated auctioneer aloud. $1,900,000. The bid is $1,900,000 with the gentleman. $1,900,000. Anyone say $2 million? He looks down at the front row and says, "No, I'm sorry, $2 million's next." $1,900,000. $1,900,000 then in the third row at $1,900,000. Is there any further advance at $1,900,000? Fair warning at $1,900,000, and he raises his little wooden gavel stub and slowly starts to bring it down. Last call, and then suddenly $2 million, he explains and points to the front row. Whoa! Then instantly $2,200,000, and the whole crowd whoops. This huge tension release, laughing, clapping, all the way pinning the needle, and then totally quieted again in about 2 seconds, flying by as fast as bebop.
Yeah.
Anticipation, says the auctioneer, articulating the air of the collective moment. $2,200,000? $2,200,000? At $2,200,000 in the third row. Are we all done at $2,200,000? Sold at $2,200,000, and the whole room explodes. And just as the applause is dying down, as it just did, The auctioneer steps up again and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to announce that this is a new world record for a literary manuscript at auction." It says here there's another round of cheering and whooping. You guys got the script. And then as soon as the final clapping dies down, some guy yells, "Corso lives!" So there's that one. Okay, and now this is in a way a collaboration because the great Holly George Warren, who introduced me, I thought she just edited this book. She came up with the whole freaking idea for the Rolling Stone Book of the Beats and put that whole bad book together. And this is on just about every top 10 best beat books of all time. There's nary a one that doesn't have this book on it. So, and blessedly, she invited me to participate in her literary party.
Right, it was the one thing that got me back to work after having my son Jack.
Right, yes, right. That's
It was the one thing that motivated me to go back to work.
Yes, and I believe you told me that it was the most joyous, fulfilling book you ever worked on in all the time at Rolling Stone.
Yeah, 40-something books. Yeah.
Right on. So, because we knew each other and were kind of jamming in the same circles and all, she said, "Brian, whatever you want to write about, you'll have some good idea." And one of the things that I wanted to always explore was what's going on right now in this room and at this festival, which is the power of the collective. And it's so much more important when you could get with other people and work together, and it just lifts all the boats. And so I wanted to kind of explore that and get it into print and sort of stress it for people that it's about working together, man, and how that empowers all of us. And the Beat Generation wouldn't freaking exist if it wasn't for a collective of them. If they were just individual cats in 50 different states, forget it. So, okay, so here's a greatly abridged version for performance purposes. So, a little more coffee. Give me your befuddled masses, your rejection slips, pink slips, verbal slips, all. Knock down the gates, throw open the bars. The artists are having a ball. Teach me, show me, let me in. Challenge me, push me, help me win. Athletes have their team, and suits can wear the firm, but making art keeps you home alone, and LCK is the place you turn. Solo suffering totally blows, so into the sea you dive, searching for souls who swim like you and act at least vaguely alive. With deep sea whales you plunge the depths, and with freshwater poets you school. With coral reefers you spark the sea, drinking in dreams from the pool. Out of the one grow many, and out of the many grows the one, the the it, the aha, the unspoken thing. And from this desire for oneness, togetherness, the artists, from the beat poets to the Lilith songwriters, have collaborated, cajoled, and consoled each other into movements and generations. The Beat Generation may never have had a single unified voice any more than Generation X does, but their range of harmonies ended up blending into a pretty inspiring choir. And in this supportive spirit, a loosely defined beat community became a very interdisciplinary affair, as they freely mingled and collaborated with abstract expressionist painters, jazz musicians, living theater actors, playwrights, photographers, cartoonists, dancers, mystics, and poets from other New York schools. In smoking Greenwich Village joints, like the Cedar Tavern, the San Remo, the Artist Club, something more than ideas were being exchanged. We were sharing the holy light, says composer David Amram, Kerouac's principal musical collaborator, and the jazz laureate of the generation. The Artist Club was a beautiful get-together run by artists for artists, while talking philosophy, arguments, and discussions by the hour by serious and brilliant people. And then afterwards, we'd all go over to the Cedar Tavern and continue the rap. It was like a floating university. Nowhere is this more visually animated than in the 1959 film Pull My Daisy, see also tomorrow night's show, the single most illuminating beat collaboration. Narrated by Kerouac's best 28 minutes on tape, captured in early cinema verite by evocative still photographer Robert Frank, playfully scored by the classically trained Amram, who also appears as the bop and French horn as Mez McGillicuddy, and starring Allen Ginsberg, Gregory Corso, and Peter Orlovsky, this Lower East Side home movie is the only existing footage of the Beats in their prime, other than a few scattered TV clips. Co-produced by painter Alfred Leslie and shot in his canvas-filled loft, featuring painter Larry Rivers in the role of Neil Cassidy, who was sadly imprisoned in San Quentin at the time, with art dealer Richard Bellamy as the bishop antagonist, and financed by Wall Street libertine painter Walter Gutman. It's a film made by painters about poets, narrated by a novelist. And this same blessing of community has been felt by artists ranging from the high Renaissance in Florence to the also fairly high poetry Renaissance in San Francisco. Most of the groundbreaking geniuses of Florence circa 1500 belonged to some regimented guild or patron stable. So many of the artists like Michelangelo, Leonardo, or Filippo Lippi, along with the architects and storytellers and poets, would gather in their own mock confraternities. So dig this as the 1500 artists in Florence. In one of the more wacky images in art history, picture several of these blazing masters meeting as they did as the Company of the Cauldron for lively drunken dinners around a giant cooking pot in one of their sculpture studios, and they begin creating murals not with paint but with chicken legs and sausages and cheese and jelly. Even though their quarrels were nearly as colorful as their art, never has a generation of artists advanced their media so quickly. I'd like to introduce you to my friend David. That has never gotten a laugh, and I always thought it would. 20 years, like David, you know, Michelangelo's David. It's fallen flat for 20 years. And I was thinking, maybe this time somehow if In San Francisco in the 1950s, a community of poets began a similarly inspired coffeehouse collective, meeting and reading in the nooks and bookstores of North Beach, embracing the Platonic adage, to good men's parties, good men flock unasked.
Whoa.
It's a good one. Symposium. The cultural outlaws from around the nation who gathered in this traditionally liberal port city were starting to notice the same faces on the same stages night after night. Poets like Gary Snyder, Michael McClure, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Robert Duncan, Kenneth Patchen and Russ Roth, assemblage artists like Bruce Conner and Wallace Berman, and filmmakers like Kenneth Anger and Harry Smith, all began enthusiastic crossover interdisciplinary collectives, and were breaking society's bird-brained habit of pigeonholing artists. A lush flower garden had burst into bloom, and it wasn't long before the psychedelic Paisley ran wild. In a sun shower of day-glow paint, Ken Kesey and his merry pranksters had a great notion to take the collective to an even higher level. Incubating in pools of acid on the edge of Stanford University, Kesey was forming an ever-expanding coterie of authors and intellectuals that would eventually encompass Neil Cassidy, the Grateful Dead, and Cherry Kool-Aid. As intrepid traveler Ken Babbs put it, the pranksters are a collective of that American spirit that's been passed on from the founding fathers through Melville, Transcendentalism, Whitman, Faulkner, the Beats, and zoom into the pranksters, where it took a wild turn of spontaneity in tribal dance, uninhibited jazz, nonsensical word raps, and any other unfettered reaching of the spirit towards newfound freedoms.
Oh.
Ken Babbs in the house. And a healthy dose of this prankster ethic came from the pranksterish Dadaists, who were trying to overthrow not only the rigidity of the fine arts in the 1910s and 20s, but civilization itself by staging pranks in public spaces like cathedrals in the middle of a service. This gang of offbeat artists and authors had a collective effect on history, rather than simply getting arrested as solo psychos. Work together. And that's the great thing. As much as these cool collectives were happening in the recent past, many are thriving today. From communal artist hearths like New York's Nuyorican Poets Cafe, which I wrote this 20-something years ago when the Nuyorican was happening, and I saw it's still happening, and there's shows going on this past, so I was like, you know, great, these things are surviving. Like the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, the Knitting Factory, to attention setting, getting rock fests like Lilith Fair and the Tibetan Freedom Concerts, groups of like-minded people are still working together for the collective better. It's good for the soul, for one thing. Cheryl Crow told me about joining the Lilith tour. I mean, it's what religion's based on. That commune, the community, the solace, and the fellowship of people who have a kindred spirit. Whether it's painting the walls with dinner in Florence, or breakfast in bed for 400,000 at Woodstock, coming together stretches the horizon beyond the sum of its parts. And you don't have to be 500,000 strong. As George Harrison put it of his much smaller group, that was the good thing about being four together. Not like Elvis, you know. I always felt sorry for him later because he was on his own. But he had his guys with him, but they were only one Elvis, and nobody else knew what he felt like. But for us, we all shared the experience. Being together counts, even a collective of two. Supporting someone who is supporting you is the seed of a generation. That's the fun part. There it is. So the power of the collective.
Yeah.